I work really hard to make videos for you all, so please subscribe to my channel and like this video. Also, make sure to tell me your name and where you are watching this story from. Let's start the story. I've never been the type to believe in ghost stories. Growing up in Michigan, I'd heard my fair share of local legends: abandoned farmhouses haunted by Civil War widows, hitchhikers vanishing without a trace, and old Native American burial grounds cursed forever. But to me, those were just stories, tales spun around bonfires to keep teenagers awake at night. That changed in the summer of 2017. It has taken me years to really find the words for what I experienced. Sometimes, even now, when headlights flare in my rearview mirror or when I see endless stretches of forgotten highway, I feel it all over again. The bone-deep fear, the creeping sense that something was riding along with me in the car, unseen, but very real. What I'm about to tell you is exactly what happened on my road trip from Detroit to Los Angeles. I was alone. And if you think road trips are all about pit stops, freedom, and landscapes, let me tell you, there are roads in America you don't ever want to drive. It all started with an idea that sounded perfect at the time: drive cross-country before real life locked me down. I had just graduated from Wayne State University, had a half-decent used Honda Civic, and about $3,000 saved. My plan? Detroit to Los Angeles, stopping in Chicago, Denver, Las Vegas, and maybe a few detours to see real America. My parents begged me to fly. The country isn't as safe as it used to be, my dad warned. But I wanted the journey, not just the destination. I wanted to see America, the endless highways, the small towns, the diners that never close. It was supposed to be my escape, my adventure before joining an ad agency job in LA. I packed the basics: clothes, a couple of maps because I never trusted my phone completely, and an old DSLR. What I didn't pack was the knowledge of what was waiting out there. The first day was smooth. Detroit to Chicago took about 5 hours, and the city welcomed me with its deep dish pizza and skyline. Nothing strange, nothing eerie. Day 2, I cut across Iowa. Cornfields, fields, more cornfields, and the monotony was almost hypnotic. I saw stretches of road where not a single car passed for miles. By day 3, I was in Nebraska, my playlist cycling through classic rock and podcasts. That's when I first felt it, an odd pull toward a different route. On my GPS, the highway showed a strange, gray line cutting southwest, branching from the main interstate. The name flickered oddly: US Route 6 Hollow Stretch. I thought maybe it was a glitch, but curiosity gnawed at me. Hollow Stretch. It sounded like a forgotten part of the old highway system, and in the moment, it felt like the road was daring me to take it. The exit wasn't marked, just a faded green sign, half rusted over, leaning to one side as if no car had taken it in years. Still, I steered off. The Hollow Stretch Highway looked wrong. No road in America should have looked that desolate. The asphalt was cracked, weeds sprouting through. The dividing lines were faded, like scars that hadn't healed. I drove anyway, telling myself it was just an old bypass road. The first few miles were uneventful, just silence and more silence, broken by the hum of my car engine. But then, the atmosphere changed. The air felt heavier. The sky turned strange, not dark, not stormy, but tinted, washed-out gray like the world had been muted. My radio started crackling until it fuzzed out completely, leaving only static. Even my phone lost signal. And yet, I kept driving. About 20 miles in, I saw a gas station. Relief flickered because I was already half a tank down. The station looked forgotten. A squat building with peeling paint, one lonely pump standing like a relic from the 60s. Above the entrance, a neon sign buzzed weakly, saying, "Fuel and rest." I pulled in. The moment my tires hit the gravel, I noticed something. Not a single car around. Not even a rusted-out shell. The place seemed completely deserted. Inside, though, a man stood behind the counter. Old, with leathery skin, his eyes hidden by thick glasses. He didn't move when I came in. He just said one thing: "Don't stay after dark." I asked him what he meant, but he didn't answer. He rang me up for a full tank in silence. When I left, he was still standing there, watching me through the grime-streaked window. Something about his words sunk into me like ice.
An hour later, I came into a town. No name on the welcome sign. It was scratched off, letters long gone. The streets were eerily clean, but empty. Storefronts stood with curtains drawn. A diner sat at the corner, its sign flickering open, though inside it looked dark. Against my better judgment, I stopped. The town looked like a movie set, as though life had simply paused. At first glance, there were shadows moving in the diner, shapes almost human but not quite. I didn't go closer. Something primal screamed at me to get back in the car. That's when I noticed the windows. Every building's windows had something odd pressed against the glass. Faces, pale, blurred faces staring outward as if trying to watch me through frosted glass. Not moving, not blinking. I drove out as fast as I could. By dusk, the hollow stretch had twisted into something worse. The road narrowed, flanked by skeletal trees with no leaves. My headlights barely cut through the suffocating gray fog rolling in. That's when I saw him. Someone walking along the edge of the highway. A hitchhiker. He wore a long coat, his thumbs sticking out half-heartedly. His face was hidden by a tilted hat. Against all sanity, I slowed down. When I stopped, he opened the back door without asking and slid in. The smell of damp earth filled the car. "Evening," he said, voice flat. I tried to ask where he was headed, but he didn't answer directly. He said only, "You're too deep now. There ain't no turning back before the hollow takes notice." My skin crawled. Every instinct told me to pull over and kick him out, but I couldn't. My hands felt locked onto the wheel. The hitchhiker was silent for the next 20 minutes until he said something that still haunts me. "They're behind us." I looked in the rearview mirror. At first, I saw nothing, but then figures began emerging from the fog. Dozens, pale, thin, faceless figures walking in unison along the cracked asphalt, always keeping pace with my car no matter how fast I drove. Their limbs looked too long. Their bodies didn't sway naturally, just floated step after step. I was gasping when I turned to the back seat. Empty. The hitchhiker was gone. After the hitchhiker vanished, I drove until my eyes burned. The figures behind me had stopped appearing in the mirror, but the dread didn't leave. Every mile felt heavier than the last, as if the road itself was stretching longer than it should. When exhaustion clawed at me, I noticed a faded sign glowing in the fog. Pine Rest Motel. Vacancy. I nearly cried with relief. A motel meant a bed, maybe answers, maybe other people. The building squatted just off the highway, its neon half burned out, buzzing like an insect. The parking lot should have had cars, but mine was the only one. The office door creaked when I pushed it open. Inside, an old bell jingled.
A woman appeared from the back. Gray hair pulled into a bun, eyes too wide, lips locked in a too bright smile that didn't touch her face. "Checking in?" she asked, voice flat, rehearsed, like a recording. I hesitated, but exhaustion won. I signed a logbook where the pages looked decades old, names scribbled in shaky handwriting. The most recent entry was from 1983. Room key, room 6. The motel room was basic. One bed, one chair, one lamp. Everything smelled faintly of mildew. As I lay down, I heard it. Whispers. Not outside, inside the walls. Low, urgent, endless. I pressed my ear to the plaster. The voices sounded layered, thousands of them, whispering in unison, overlapping one another. As the night deepened, the whispers shaped into words. "Stay. Don't leave. Be one of us." I bolted upright, heart hammering. Shadows gathered at the edges of the room, where the corners should have been empty. They weren't. Shaped like people, not really, but as they swelled, I swore they had hands. I ran. When I burst into the office to demand an explanation, the receptionist was gone. The logbook on the counter was missing. Only the old brass bell remained, still vibrating as if someone had just rung it. I didn't check out properly. I just left. The hollow stretch doesn't work like a normal road. I realized that soon after leaving the motel. No matter how far I drove, the mile markers repeated. 24, 25, 26, and then back to 24 again. GPS was useless. It showed only a blinking arrow in an empty void. The fuel gauge didn't fall the way it should. Sometimes it even rose. And the strangest part, the sun didn't move. I'd entered at dusk, but now the sky was locked in a permanent twilight. Not night, not day, but that gray in-between sickly color. I tried side roads. Every turn just curved me back onto the hollow, like a trap, like the road itself refused to let me go. Hours or maybe days later, I saw the same gas station again. Only it wasn't the same. The sign still read fuel and rest, but the windows were boarded up now. The pump smashed, the neon gone dark. It looked like it had been abandoned for decades. Still, I was drawn inside.
The air was thick with rot and dust. Shelves sagged under the weight of time. As I turned to leave, I felt eyes on me. There he was, the old man, standing behind the counter, motionless as if he had never left. But his glasses were cracked now, his skin gray, sagging like wax melting in heat. This time, he didn't warn me. Instead, he rasped, "They know you now. You breathed too long in their air. You're marked." I demanded to know how to leave. He just smiled, teeth jagged, blackened. "You don't leave the hollow. You just stop fighting it." Shaken, I got back in my car and floored it until the fog thinned into something like clarity. Ahead, I saw movement. At first, I thought it was another town. Then I saw what it really was. Crowds of people walking down the highway. But not people. These things were stretched thin, their skin pale and papery, mouths torn into eternal half-smiles with no eyes above them. Their ribs jutted out, their arms dangled too low, almost dragging along the asphalt. Each step was in perfect unison, like a horrible parade. As my headlights swept over them, their heads snapped toward me in unison. No eyes, but they saw. I heard their whispers, not through ears, but in my skull. Join, join, join. I slammed the car in reverse, but when I looked behind me, another wave of them was coming. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Nowhere to run, nowhere to turn. The hollow stretch had found me. The car shook as I slammed it from reverse back into drive, the engine screaming against my panic. My headlights painted the faceless crowd in jerky flashes. They were everywhere now, closing in from both directions on the highway. Their bodies swayed in that unnatural rhythm, their arms dragging as if gravity pulled harder on them than on me. I yanked the wheel, driving off the cracked pavement into the shoulder. The Civic bounced violently across dead grass before I found a narrow dirt service road. Anything to get off that cursed stretch. But the whispers followed. Inside my head, not outside. Thousands of voices whispering, "You're already ours. Breathe deeper. Stop fighting." I don't know how long I drove down that dirt path. The fog thinned, the road straightened, and then, suddenly, it all stopped. The voices, the whispers, even the sound of my engine seemed muffled as if something had swallowed it whole. I rolled to a stop. This new stretch of roadway was unlike the hollow itself. Clean pavement, white markers fresh, trees standing tall on either side. It looked like normal America again, but I didn't trust it. Places here shifted like illusions, and then I noticed them. Objects on the roadside. At first glance, trash. On a second look, possessions. A child's shoe, a driver's license cracked in half, a Polaroid photo warped with moisture showing a family of 4 smiling in front of Disneyland. The farther I went, the more items littered the road. Backpacks, jackets, suitcases torn wide open, evidence of travelers, all abandoned. In the distance, someone stood on the divider, motionless. My stomach turned cold. It was him, the hitchhiker. Same coat, same tilted hat, but this time his face was clearer. Pale, sunken, features too sharp like bones pressing against thin paper. His eyes were pits, blacker than the fog that surrounded him. I slowed involuntarily. "You shouldn't have run," he said. His voice wasn't speech, it vibrated directly in my skull, as though he bypassed ears entirely. I shouted through the rolled-up glass, "What do you want from me?" He took a step closer. My car should have roared forward, but I couldn't move. My limbs were locked. "They don't want what you bring," he whispered. "They only want you." And then, just like before, he vanished. The driver's side mirror cracked, splitting into a spiderweb fracture from the inside out, though nothing had touched it. I drove on, against all logic, against all sanity, and that's when I saw it. The sign through the gray mist. Pine Rest Motel. Vacancy. My breath froze. The same motel, the same neon hum, but it wasn't behind me. It was ahead, as though the road had looped into itself. I slammed the brakes, gravel spraying up around me. Everything inside screamed, "Don't go in!" But the road had folded back into itself. Forward was the motel. Behind, where the crowd gathered. I had no choice. The office was unchanged. The 2 bright women appeared once again, as if no time had passed. She handed me the exact same key, room 6. The logbook was back on the desk with the same faded entries. When I reached the room, it was exactly as before. Same chair, same mildew smell, same lamp humming faintly. But the whispering voices were louder this time. not in the walls, in the air itself. When the lamp flickered off without warning, darkness poured in like water, and through that suffocating darkness, I felt them, pressing closer, hands brushing against my skin, though no one was visible. A single shape began forming in the shadows, taller than the doorframe, limbs too many, and those whispers stitched into words that froze my blood. You can never leave.
The shape in the corner of room 6 grew more defined as the whispering crescendo rose like a tide. My throat was so dry I couldn't scream, couldn't even breathe properly. The thing's limbs dragged along the walls, leaving smeared, dark markings like soot. Its head tilted too far, neck bending with a sickening crack. I bolted for the door, locked. The key that had gotten me in was gone from my pocket. I yanked, pulled, slammed my shoulder against it, but the door didn't even rattle. Behind me, the whispers solidified into a voice, one voice made of thousands. Stay. The lamp flickered back on for a heartbeat, and in that flash I saw them. Dozens of pale faces pressed against the window, faceless but grinning, their outlines fogging the glass as if breathing it. Then darkness again. Something touched my wrist. Not cold, not hot, just wrong. Like my skin didn't belong to me anymore. I thrashed, throwing myself across the bed, but the room seemed to stretch. The floor longer, the ceiling farther, every movement slower. And then a hand clamped over my mouth. I saw nothing, but the whisper hissed in my ear. You've been here before. Over and over. You never left. I couldn't stand it. In pure terror, I bit down on the unseen hand. My teeth met nothing but air, and yet the grip loosened. That was all I needed. I hurled myself at the window. The glass didn't shatter. It dissolved, turning into smoke. I fell through it, straight into the night. I landed hard. Gravel cut into my skin, but pain reminded me I was alive. I scrambled to my feet, expecting the parking lot, but the motel was gone. Gone completely, as if it had never been there. The highway stretched out before me, identical on both sides, fog thicker than before, no horizon, no sky, just endless gray. And in the middle of the road sat my car, engine idling, door open, like it had been waiting for me. I climbed back inside, shaking. The second I gripped the wheel, though, something was different. The odometer flickered, all zeros. My gas tank read full, even though I hadn't filled up since entering the hollow. And on the dashboard, just faintly, words glowed. Welcome back. The road in front of me stretched endlessly. Out of desperation, I pressed the accelerator. The car surged forward, faster, faster, until the speedometer hit 90, 100, 110. But outside, the fog didn't blur. The trees didn't whip past. Everything moved wrong, as if distance didn't exist here. And then the radio clicked on. No music, no static, just a voice. My own voice. You can't outrun yourself. The wheel jerked, snapping right. I nearly lost control. For a split second, headlights illuminated the passenger seat. Someone sat there. The hitchhiker, hat pulled low, grin stretched across his pallid face. But this time,
His presence was solid, undeniable. "This is the part where you stop pretending you're just passing through," he said calmly. "You're part of the hollow now. You've always been." I screamed at him, demanded to know why me. He only tilted his head and whispered, "Because you chose the road. Nobody ever takes the road by mistake." And then the lights cut out. The engine died. The world went black. For what felt like hours, I floated in blackness. No road, no car, no sound, just emptiness. Then, without warning, the headlights blinked back on. But they weren't my headlights. I was sitting motionless in my Civic while dozens of other cars lined both sides of the highway, their beams all aimed directly at me. Rusting Pontiacs, wagon trees from the 70s, old pickup trucks with broken grills, vehicles spanning decades, every one abandoned, but with their lights blazing bright. Inside them sat drivers, or what was left of them. Slumped, gray, their hands fused to steering wheels, their empty faces glowing in the glare. They weren't alive. They weren't dead. They were leftovers, caught forever on this road. In the silence, one car horn blared, then another. Soon the whole line of corpses seemed awake, an orchestra of blaring horns and flashing brights that closed in on me until I pressed both palms over my ears. And then dark again. When the dark settled, I wasn't in the car anymore. I was standing in a living room, old wallpaper curled in strips off the walls. A TV hummed with static. Frames lined the mantel, showing a family, faces covered in blur, as though the camera had rejected them. A voice whispered from everywhere, "Remember." But these weren't my memories, not my family, yet my feet knew where to go, how to walk that hallway to the small bedroom at the end. I pushed the door open. A child's room, a bed half made, toys scattered on the floor. And on the bed sat a boy. He looked up at me slowly, no eyes, just dark holes sunk deep. But when he spoke, his voice was my own. "You never left. You've always been here."
I stumbled backward. The wallpaper peeled in sheets, the floorboards stretching and splitting apart. And suddenly, I was back on the highway again, breath steaming in the fog. The mob of hollowed surrounded me. Hundreds. Some walked without legs, dragging themselves forward endlessly. Others were so thin they seemed almost two-dimensional, like drawings come to life. Each face the same, blank where there should have been features, yet grins etched into their flesh like scars. They circled, moving in rhythm, shuffling closer in steady cadence. And for the first time, one broke from the group. She wore a red dress, tattered to threads, feet bare and bloodied. Her featureless face tilted toward me, and she stretched out a hand. Her whispers cut deeper than the rest. "You can still leave if you give yourself." I ran. No plan, no destination, just ran. Their footsteps, their dragging limbs echoed behind me. But the farther I pushed, the more impossible it felt.
The hollow wasn't endless road anymore. It was closing, walls of fog tightening, forcing me toward one direction, back to my car. The Civic's engine rumbled faintly, key already in the ignition, like it had been waiting for me the whole time. On the dash, glowing words replaced the speedometer. Choose. And below it, two choices flickered. Stay. Drive. I didn't know what stay meant. I didn't know what drive meant. But the hollow demanded one. The mob pressed closer, faceless grins smiling wider. The hitchhiker leaned against my passenger window, tapping the glass with one finger. "Go on," he said softly. "Choose. Everyone chooses, sooner or later." My chest felt like it would burst. The hollowed were closing in, their whispers pouring into my skull like oil. The dashboard still pulsed two words: stay, drive. My hand shook above the wheel. I didn't know what stay would mean. Maybe it meant surrender? Maybe it meant becoming one of those faceless husks, forever whispering, forever circling the road. Drive could mean escape, but could just as easily mean driving deeper into something even worse. I slammed my palm onto the horn and screamed, "I choose drive!" The dashboard flickered. The word drive burned too bright, searing my eyes. And then the car launched forward, except I wasn't in control. The wheel turned by itself. The accelerator pressed flat without my foot. My Civic barreled down the hollow's endless stretch while I sat pinned in my seat, watching the world distort around me. The fog peeled back, and I saw flashes. Towns, motels, gas stations. All the same places I'd already passed, but they changed every second. One blink, the motel was intact, neon buzzing. The next, it was rubble, caved in, decades rotted. A diner appeared, first glowing with life, then filled with hollowed, hunched-over booths, whispering in unison. The road wasn't a road anymore. It was time itself unraveling. In the corner of my eye, the hitchhiker sat calmly in the passenger seat. He didn't think drive meant leave, did you? You just told the road to take you further in. The car skidded to a stop on a bridge. Below, not water, not ground, an abyss, infinite, swallowing light itself. The bridge stretched ahead, impossibly long, fading into shadow. I gripped the wheel. Maybe, just maybe, this was it, the way through. The hitchhiker leaned closer, his breath like damp earth. Cross it, and you'll see the truth. But once you see it, there's no going back. The hollowed were behind me, filling the road at the entrance of the bridge, their grins glowing faint white even in the fog. They weren't chasing anymore. They were waiting. Waiting for me to make the final step. I pressed the gas. Slowly, cautiously, the Civic creeped forward across crumbling concrete. Every sound amplified into thunder. The groan of tires, the hum of the engine, my heartbeat. At first, nothing. Then the whispers returned. Not from behind anymore, from below, rising out of the abyss under the bridge. Thousands of voices. No, millions, roaring together, begging, pleading, screaming. The hitchhiker smiled for the first time, his teeth too sharp for a human mouth. This is the hollow's truth. Every mile ever driven, every life ever lost to the road, it all ends here.
Below, I dared to look down into that void, and I saw them. Cars falling endlessly, spinning in slow motion, with silhouettes of drivers trapped inside, hands pounding windshields, mouths open in silent screams. They never landed. They just fell forever, down and down. Ahead, the bridge curved abruptly. I realized if I kept going, I would either follow it into that endless dark, or I could turn. But there was no rail, no barrier. Turning meant risking everything. The dashboard flickered again. New words appeared. Turn. Continue. And for the first time, the choice was mine. The hitchhiker leaned back, crossing his long, thin hands. "Time to decide," he said. "Do you end the road, or do you surrender to it forever?"
The bridge stretched before me, curving into that impossible dark. The dashboard glowed its two commands, pulsing like a heartbeat. Turn. Continue. I gripped the wheel so hard my knuckles went white. My lungs burned, my ribs ached, and every instinct inside me screamed that whichever choice I made, I'd lose something. Behind me, the hollows stood in absolute stillness. No more pursuit, no whispers. They were waiting to see what I would do, as though this wasn't just my decision, but theirs too. I breathed once, sharp and ragged. Then I wrenched the wheel. The Civic jolted sideways, tires screeching against cracked concrete. For a heartbeat, it felt like the bridge gave way beneath me. The abyss surged upward as though gravity had twisted, but somehow the wheels caught pavement again. The bridge was gone. I was on a two-lane country road, fields of wheat waving in the breeze on either side, blue sky above, birds soaring, the sun, the actual sun, warming my face through the windshield. I sobbed out loud. It was over. It had to be over. Town signs appeared, gas stations with smiling attendants, familiar things. But every time I passed someone, I noticed it. Subtle, wrong. A girl on a bicycle with no eyes. A man mowing his lawn with no mouth. A family at a picnic whose faces were perfectly blank. They waved at me as I passed, cheerful, content. I realized too late the road hadn't let me go. It had just shown me a different kind of prison. The Civic surged straight ahead, following the bridge deeper into the abyss. Whispers poured from below like a hurricane. The hollowed crowded tighter at the far end, arms raised high, not to block me, to welcome me. The hitchhiker finally tipped his hat back enough for me to see his face fully. It wasn't a stranger's. It was mine. Paler, stretched thin, eyes gutted into black voids. "You see now," the other me said. "Every path on the hollow leads back to yourself. You're not a driver on this road. You're fuel for it." The car hit the final stretch of bridge. The concrete simply ended. And we fell. I didn't scream. I couldn't. The abyss swallowed the sound before it left my throat. Below me, 1,000 cars drifted forever into the dark, caught in endless descent. I recognized their drivers. Their faces weren't strangers. They were my own again and again, Countless versions of myself looping forever. Endless. Whether I turned or continued didn't matter. Both were endings, both were cages. The hollow doesn't take you randomly, you choose it. Every traveler who ever left the interstate for just a shortcut, every driver who followed a strange, empty detour, every soul who thought they were different, they all end up here. Some become the hollowed, their bodies stripped of memory. Some remain in false towns, living shadows of what they knew before. The rest keep driving. Forever. And me? I don't know anymore if I escaped or not. Because sometimes when I'm out on the highway at night, free beneath stars and open sky, I see it again, just for the briefest moment. An exit ramp with no sign. A stretch of cracked pavement leading into fog. And my GPS flickers those cursed words. US Route 6, hollow stretch. I made it back. At least I think I did. I woke up slumped over the wheel at a truck stop just outside Denver. Morning light spilled across the parking lot. Real light, birds, traffic, the smell of frying bacon drifting from the diner beside the pumps. For the first time in what felt like weeks, I heard the chorus of ordinary life. Truckers joking by the fuel pumps, a kid crying over a dropped ice cream cone, the jingle of a bell as someone opened the diner door. It was all so beautifully normal that I cried right there behind the wheel. I convinced myself the hollow stretch had been nothing but a fever dream, a stress-induced hallucination, a trick of exhaustion, until I tried to pay for gas. The clerk handed me the receipt, mumbling, "Cashier 6. The number made ice bloom in my chest. I looked down at the paper, scrawled where the total should have been, wasn't a number. It was a word burned faintly into the ink itself. Drive. I dropped the receipt like it had scorched my hand and bolted. Back in the car, the dashboard was fine. Odometer normal. Fuel gauge steady. No glowing words. But the unease never ebbed. As I pressed on westward, I tried to push it all into the past. Chicago lights were real. Nebraska cornfields were real. Surely Denver was real too, but the hollow followed.
At rest stops, I would glance into a mirror and for a split second see myself, but older, paler, smiling that same empty smile I'd seen on the hollowed. At night, when passing long-haul trucks, I swore their trailers had windows instead of panels, faces pressed inside, watching. One night in Utah, I parked at a scenic overlook. The desert stars glimmered so purely that for a moment I felt safe. Then I turned to get back in the car, and there he was, the hitchhiker, standing beside me, hat tipped forward, saying nothing, just waiting. When I blinked, he was gone. But in my back seat lay a child's shoe, the same one I'd seen on the hollowed road. By the time I reached Los Angeles, exhaustion no longer came from driving. It came from listening. Because the hollow doesn't stop whispering. Not out loud anymore, but deep in my skull, just at the edge of thought. When I close my eyes at night, I hear it, hundreds of voices layered together. You chose the road. You never left.
you're still driving. Sometimes, when I finally do sleep, I dream of that bridge. Every time I reach the curve, sometimes I turn, sometimes I plunge forward. But in the end, I always wake up behind my Civic's wheel, the odometer flickering 0. I never tell anyone, because how could I? To friends, to family, I say the trip was great. I took back roads, saw small towns. Nothing unusual happened. But I don't go on road trips anymore, not even an hour out of town, because every so often, every few weeks, I catch it again. The GPS flickers strangely for just a heartbeat. US Route 6, hollow stretch. And always, in my rear-view mirror, a shape glimpsed for less than a breath. A man standing on the roadside, thumb out, hat tipped forward, waiting. It has been years now since that summer. I keep telling myself the hollow stretch was just a fever dream stitched together by exhaustion and paranoia. But no matter how many times I try to bury it, it keeps clawing back. I see it in flashes. Out on the freeway at night, every so often an exit ramp with no sign will appear, lit faintly by a rusted green post, fog curling across the asphalt. If I blink fast enough, it disappears. But I know it's there, waiting. The same hungry silence, the same gray air, the same choice. I don't drive long distances anymore. I take public transit. I avoid back roads. I especially avoid Route 6. And if anyone ever tells me about a shortcut they found on their GPS, an unmarked highway, something quicker and quieter that doesn't show up normally, I put my hand on their shoulder and tell them, don't take it. Don't even slow down. Keep driving and ignore it, no matter what. Most of them laugh. They think I'm joking or superstitious. Some even tease me about being afraid of an old road. But then sometimes, in their eyes, I see a flicker. Recognition. Like they already know what I mean. Like maybe they've seen the hollow too. There's one more thing I've never told anyone. Sometimes, late at night, when the city streets go quiet and the hum of traffic disappears, the whispers return. They don't scare me anymore, not the way they used to, because lately, I've started listening. One message comes through clearer than the rest, over and over, like an engine idling in the dark. You never left. And deep down in my bones, I know it's true. I never escaped the hollow highway. I'm still driving it. Maybe I always will be.